I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. These words from Martin Luther King Jr. were spoken in front of 250,000 people at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Martin Luther King Jr.'s peaceful ways of rebelling against racial inequality made his actions recognized today, over 50 years later. Martin Luther King Jr. is known for promoting and fighting for civil rights. He is honored by many, but is now honored with a memorial which is visited by thousands every day. Martin Luther King Jr. risked everything he had promoting civil rights for African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister who devoted his life to promoting civil rights for blacks and other Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. was a very peaceful man with a peaceful way of settling disputes. Martin Luther King Jr. met many famous people throughout his lifetime. He met with President John F. Kennedy discussing civil rights for African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech was given in front of hundreds of thousands of people who marched down Washington, D.C. to support civil rights on August 28, 1963. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested and wrote his infamous letter from the Birmingham jail, which promoted nonviolent actions and protests. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested in 1964 for participating in the Montgomery bus boycott, speaking against the government, and disobeying laws that he thought were unjust. After being arrested, the FBI started recording and listening to Martin Luther King Jr.'s phone calls. In 1964, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, which forbid people to discriminate against people for their race or gender in hiring, firing, or promoting those people. On December 10, 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. accepted a Nobel Peace Prize for peacefully protesting for civil rights. Martin Luther King Jr. was only 35 years old when he received a Nobel Prize, and he donated $54,123 of his prize money to the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4, 1968. April 7th of 1968 was declared a day of mourning for Martin Luther King Jr.'s death. His "I Have a Dream" speech is considered one of the most inspirational speeches ever given. Martin Luther King Jr. was admired for being peaceful and promoting nonviolent boycotts and nonviolence of any kind. Many people pushed for the Martin Luther King Jr. to open, and after 23 years, the construction of the memorial began. Over 900 applicants from 52 countries submitted designs for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, but only one won. Many donations were made, which were 65% of the memorial's budget. At the center of the memorial stands a 30-foot-tall sculpture of him called the Stone of Hope. The 4-acre site will be the first memorial on the National Mall to honor a colored man. The King family, along with many others, shovels dug into the site in front of 5,000 viewers. The fundraising and building of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial took almost 23 years. The entrance to the memorial will be a gap set between two granite rocks that open to reveal the King statue. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is between the Jefferson and Lincoln Memorials, which helps form the memorial's message even more. It forms the line of leadership. The line of leadership is the imaginary line that is formed going from the Lincoln Memorial to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial to the Jefferson Memorial. All three men have to do with the civil rights movement. Lincoln fought against slavery during his presidency, Martin Luther King Jr. fought against racial inequality, and Thomas Jefferson signed the U.S. Constitution, which stated that all men are created equally. The actual address is very significant to the memorial's meaning. The address is 1964 Independence Avenue, in reference to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. This memorial isn't supposed to have just one message, but many. Construction of a memorial honoring a great leader is underway about a half-mile away from the Lincoln Memorial, where King gave that famous speech. Although the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is known as peaceful and quiet, its message is very powerful. The entrance to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial will have a sculpture called the Mountain of Despair that shows the division of America. The memorial's appearance is based on a quote from his speech. We were able to cut out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. Justice, democracy, and hope are represented by water, stone, and trees in this memorial. The trees in the memorial's plaza are placed so that the Martin Luther King Jr. statue is looking down on all the blossoming flowers in the spring. When we finish this memorial, we will have a king among presidents, said Harry E. Johnson, Sr., president of the Washington, D.C. Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial Project Foundation. Oprah Winfrey, Maya Angelou, and many others worked for more than 10 years to get the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial built. The memorial will be surrounded by some of Washington's famous cherry trees and flanked by waterfalls. President George W. Bush and other Congress members wanted to get the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial built, so they added $30 million to be put toward the memorial to be built. Many other businesses added their credit, and the budget was over $100 million. One of the messages sent to the visitors of this memorial is the man, the movement, and the message. A circular stone wall will be in the memorial engraved with Martin Luther King Jr.'s words from his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. 165 colleges and other schools donated to the Dreamkeepers College program to fund the memorial. While Bill Clinton was president, he signed the legislation on November 12, 1996, that established the construction of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. The memorial's opening was on August 28th of last year, the anniversary of his speech, and thousands of visitors come view the memorial every day. Now a permanent tribute to King and his dreams stands on the National Mall. The opening of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial was set for August 28th, the anniversary of his speech. Visitors lined up about a block away from the memorial, taking pictures and videos of the grand opening. Harry E. Johnson, Sr., president of the King Memorial Project Foundation, spoke to journalists. The memorial to Dr. King is the first on the National Mall to celebrate a man of color, hope, and peace. It's a great day because today we will break ground on this little piece of real estate we call the National Mall. This front yard to honor one of the founding fathers of modern America, says Representative John Lewis. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial dedication was set for August 28th and was open to the public on August 22nd. Almost 48 years before the opening ceremony of his memorial, Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. I knew that eventually it would happen. I didn't know how long or short it would take. The hope is that this memorial will inspire us to work harder, says Martin Luther King Jr. III. He was there watching every ceremony and opening that the memorial had. President George W. Bush spoke at the Martin Luther King Memorial dedication. Today, we see these open acres, yet we know that when the work is done, the King Memorial will be a fitting tribute, powerful and hopeful and poetic, like the man it honors. President George Bush said, "As we break ground, we remember the great obstacles that Dr. King overcame and the courage that transformed American history." Before the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, there was just an empty piece of land, but later it will be worth over $100 million and will have thousands of visitors every day. The Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial may be the last on the National Mall. There's a very few acres of land left on the National Mall for any new memorials to be opening. Viewers may sit, meet, and talk throughout the memorial's plaza. Martin Luther King Jr.'s infamous speeches and actions were so honorable that he was rewarded with a monument, so his legacy could live on forever. Martin Luther King Jr.'s success is shown in many ways. One way is that the millions refer